over. Next year, come back for more.
Good night, everyone. Welcome to our third night of our electoral debates. We are in District 7 tonight. And before we continue, I'd like everyone to stand as we going to play the national song.
God bless Anguilla, nurture and keep her, noble and beauteous she stands with the sea. Oh, land of the happy, a haven we'll make thee. Our life and love we give unto thee. With heart and souls we build our nation proud, strong and free. We love her, hold her dear to our hearts for eternity. Let truth and right the banner be. We'll march ever on. Let truth and right the banner be. We'll march ever on. Mighty will make her, long may she prosper. God grant the leaders wisdom and grace. May glory and honor ever attend her. Firm shall she stand throughout every age. With hearts and souls we'll build our nation proud, strong and free. We love her, hold her dear to our hearts for eternity. Let truth and right the banner be. We'll march ever on. Let truth and right the banner be. We'll march ever on.
Please remain reverent for prayer. Dear God, we give you thanks for bringing us here tonight. We pray for your covering and your protection over tonight's proceedings. We pray for each candidate that they may be able to deliver their vision with clarity and bring understanding to the audience wherever they may be. We thank you for watching over tonight. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, thank you very much. Please remain reverent for prayer. Dear God, we give you thanks for bringing us here tonight. We pray for your covering and your protection over tonight's proceedings. We pray for each... Okay. All right. So welcome again. I'm going to welcome our candidates for tonight's debates. As I call your name, I'd ask you to join us on stage. First, we have the Honorable Cardigan Connor, who's currently member for West End and a Parliamentary Secretary, Tourism, Sports, Youth and Culture. Please put your hands together for Cardigan Connor. Next, we have the APM electoral candidate, Kimberly Fleming. Please put your hands together for Kimberly Fleming. We We also have independent electoral candidate Jamie Hodge. Please put your hands together and welcome. My name is Kasim Ford. I'm going to be your moderator for today. I am past president of the National Youth Council as well as the current dean of the National Youth Ambassador Corps. Also moderating alongside me is Ms. Taisha Emmanuel. She is currently Minister of Home Affairs in the Anguilla Youth Parliament, as well as Student Council President of the Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School.
Nominees contesting the upcoming 2020 elections will be given a chance to debate several areas of sustainable development. These debates seek to allow candidates to appeal to the young voters and express their plans to achieve youth development nationally. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015, provides a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet, now and into the future. At its heart are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, which are an urgent call for action by all countries, developed and developing, in a global partnership. They recognize that ending poverty and other deprivations must go hand in hand with strategies that improve health and education, reducing inequality, and support economic growth, all while tackling climate change and working to preserve our ocean and forests.
I will go over the ground rules for tonight's debates. Firstly, each candidate will be given 3 minutes to give an opening statement. Candidates will then be given 5 questions from the ANYC on the Sustainable Development Goals. Each candidate will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to respond to the question. In this section, the candidate is only to refer to the moderators in his or her response. After candidates have given an opportunity to respond, after candidates have been given an opportunity to respond, a maximum of 2 minutes will be given to each candidate to rebut the stance of their opponent or share further information on the question or topic, if so desired. Only in this rebuttal section are candidates allowed to respectfully refer to their opponents. After the initial 5 questions, we will field from the virtual and live audience questions. Questions must be posed to all candidates. Questions with hidden agendas or that may seem confrontational will not be asked. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to answer each question from the audience with a minute rebuttal, if so desired. After this segment is completed, candidates will be given 3 minutes to give a closing statement. If questions are not clear, kindly ask the moderator to repeat the questions. And for the audience, to ensure a debate of quality, we ask the audience to respect all candidates. Please, at this time, place all phones on silent. Please, at this time, place all phones on silent. The audience is not allowed to applaud or make any noise of any kind to interrupt the response of any candidate. Any audience member that insists on doing such will be asked to leave. No one is allowed to go down into the public library. And again, please be respectful.
We would like to extend our heartfelt thanks to our sponsors, the Government of Anguilla, Flow, Titanium Audio Visuals, Pink Mako, and Ashley's and Sons.
Okay, we're going to get right into it, and we're going to get started with our opening statements. We are going to start with the Honorable Mr. Cardigan Connor, and for each question, we will go down the line in terms of who we start with. So, Mr. Connor, you can go ahead with your opening statements.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I want to say a special thanks to the Youth Council, Anguilla National Youth Council, for allowing me and my colleague, or opponent, the opportunity to pay respects to my godmother, who will be buried tomorrow. So I really appreciate the half-an-hour break that you've given us. I want to say a special thank you to all who've turned up, and especially those from District 7. Today has been a good day for me in the sense that a number of people have called to wish me all the very best on tonight's debate. And I think at a time when there's often a challenge as to what is being said, the negativity that's often been said in what is regarded as the silly season, that is greatly appreciated. I am indeed honored that those in District 7, the electorate in District 7, chose me as their representative back in 2015. Although there have been some huge challenges starting in 2015 and 2017, and currently, I have not regretted a single day. It is something that I've asked for. I wanted to represent my people. In fact, the time that I spent away on a professional career in England and Australia, it was always my desire to come back to give back. So from the early 90s, being able to work with a number of our youngsters in school to give them an opportunity to say that not because you come from Anguilla, it doesn't mean that the world is not your oyster. I was very fortunate to be given an opportunity to travel the world and fulfill a passion that I had. And I'm very pleased and proud of the success and the role that I've played to help with the youth development. A number of persons will consider sports as just a plaything, but if you consider that it teaches us how we can move further in life with teamwork, communication, respect for others, ability to follow rules, independence, and leadership. Tonight, I plan to do the best that I possibly can, as I've done throughout my career, whether it's on the playing field, whether it's in my community, and of course, representing the people of District 7 in the Anguilla House of Assembly. To my opponents, I wish them all the best. Tonight, I hate calling them opponents, but I think people like to think it's a game, and in games you do have opponents. But whatever the outcome is, I intend to, as I've done, as I said back in 2015, to do the best I can for my people of District 7 and for the people of Anguilla at large. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mr. Connor. We will now have opening statements by Ms. Kimberly Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
We ask the audience to please turn off their devices at the time. Again, I ask the audience to please put them on silent, put on your headphones, your Bluetooth devices so that they do not go live. Thank you very much. Again, Ms. Kimberly Fleming.
Thank you again, Mr. Moderator. Good evening to everyone. My name is Kimberly Fleming, and I am the APM candidate running in District 7 in the upcoming elections. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Anguilla National Youth Council for hosting these debates and allowing the youth to have a voice and ask the questions that are important to them. As a parent, I always empowered my son with the understanding that he had a voice at our table at home and he had a say in the decision making. He took this to heart so much so that I found myself at times pulling out the mother card when I was challenged by him. It is this same principle that I have applied to all young persons that I encounter, because I know that in order to have our young people reach their full potential, they must know that they are valued, that their opinions matter, and that they have persons who have their back. And so it pleases me to be here tonight to hear from them and to answer their questions. I would also like to thank you, the listening audience, for being here, and those listening via radio and social media. And I would also like to thank my running colleagues, Mr. Honorable Cardigan Connor and Mr. Jamie Hodge, and I wish you both the best in this debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fleming. Next, we are going to hear the opening statements from Mr. Jamie Hodge.
I adopted protocols already adopted, but I would like to say a special thanks to Cardigan for mentioning my great aunt for the fact that her wake was this evening, and thank you for having the opportunity to allow us to have the half-hour break to pay tribute to our late Homer Chudson. As I continue, I am Jamie Hodge from Long Bay, raised by the great people of my community, hoping not to just win the district seat, but place my focus on youth, which in my opinion, we are once a man and twice a child. These are crucial times, and it would appear that we're moving from bad to worse. Many have asked the question, where is the next generation headed? In the attempt to answer such a question, many would think politics, given the number of youths contesting the 2020 general election. But why? Because in our lands, politics shape policies, issues legislation that can benefit us in many, many years to come. And I am a firm believer that this is exactly the reason why our numbers has grown to run for public office, fighting for the areas in which concerns us, education and the high rate of unemployment. With that being said, it would seem that we can easily succeed if we put the same emphasis on society and family building as economic and social challenges often foreseen in our homes. However, bad examples and decisions has led the youth astray, and in turn, some of us has easily lost our sense of purpose and identity. As we are punished for doing right and rewarded for doing wrong, and in some cases, imprisoned, making us distracted and disillusioned. It becomes likely that because we live in a society where places of worship preach socialism, our schools teach capitalism, and politics appear to practice corruption, our children lived in a state of greedy confusion. Furthermore, this confusion intensifies itself in a modern and civilized society, are glorifying two social extremes, playing and fighting. Sports and war, a young man's trap. Noah asks, where have all the young men gone? Please do not misunderstand me. All our children have been hit hard, boys and girls alike. However, it seems that the hardest hit, for example, on special days such as Father's Day, the boys who are without a role models and mothers become heads of households. Our youth have become further misguided, teaching an example throughout the world. National violence and fighting has become a way of life. And leaders has manufactured this thing called war, preaching aggression while hiding it under the cloak itself, defense. Sorry.
That is your time.
Sorry, if I finish just 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Cool.
I'm sorry, we have to stick by the time tonight.
No problem. Thank you much.
We will move on to the first question of the night. We will start with Ms. Kimberly Fleming. Please be reminded that you have 3 minutes with which to answer the question, and afterwards you will be given a 2-minute allotment if you choose for a rebuttal. After I read the question, you'll be given a minute in order to formulate your response. The first question reads, some models show that a significant amount of Anguilla's coastline will either be underwater or affected by coastal flooding within the next 30 to 50 years. Should we still be encouraging development, particularly tourism development in these areas? What mitigation measures would you put in place to address the impacts of coastal flooding and sea level rise? SDG 8, 9, and 11. I will read that question again. Some models show that a significant amount of Anguilla's coastline will either be underwater or affected by coastal flooding within the next 30 to 50 years. Should we still be encouraging development, particularly tourism development in these areas? What mitigation measures would you put in place to address the impacts of coastal flooding and sea level rise? SDG 8, 9, and 11. You have 1 minute to formulate your answer. Okay, I now ask Ms. Kimberly Fleming to please respond to the question.
Can you just repeat the question one more time, please?
Question reads, some models show that a significant amount of Anguilla's coastline will either be underwater or affected by coastal flooding within the next 30 to 50 years. Should we still be encouraging development, particularly tourism development in these areas? What mitigation measures would you put in place to address the impacts of coastal flooding and sea level rise?
Thank you for the question. I am from District 7, where most of our tourism development has taken place. And I have seen firsthand the effects of uncontrolled development along our coastlines. And therefore, I believe that we should have in place proper planning policies that protect our coastlines and regulate how developers are allowed to build. You find that we allow developers to encroach on the shoreline more than is necessary. For example, I'll give an example of what I'm speaking about. We look at the Four Seasons project, for the Viceroy Development Project, for example, and the fact that the main restaurant building was allowed to be built on the point, and you had the Mermaid Hole destroyed as a result. And now So in terms of development, it is then required that we do provide for proper control, of our development along the coastline to ensure that we have, sorry, I'm going to take my time. I do apologize. I'm getting used to this. This is my first time debating. Sorry.
It's okay. This is a ticket time.
It takes.
Take it in. Take it in.
So, I'll get this. I do apologize for the delay. But as I was saying, I firmly believe that we do require proper regulations where development is concerned along our coastline, and especially in terms of access to our beaches, where you find that development prohibits and in some cases restricts altogether our access to beaches. So I find that in order to ensure that we continue to have our coastline protected from erosion due to hurricanes, from being available to everyone, that there should be in place proper planning guidelines and policies that regulate this sector.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fleming. Mr. Hodge, please proceed to answer the question.
Climate change threatens coastal areas which are already stressed by human activity, population, invasive species, and storms. Hence, we need not only secure the sand dunes, but heavily manned our enforcement of policies and relates to same and population. No, I'm not here to reinvent the wheel. These policies are already in legislation in our House of Assembly. For example, building based on vegetation is 30 feet away from the sand dune. Again, who enforce these policies? Who I blame? These things need to be heavily enforced by not just the persons that live in our communities, but government alike. Beach. I lived in my village West End, grew up in my village West End, and it saddens me to know that today I cannot even walk down to the beach at several beaches and have the beach access to watch the prime boat race when I watch the lighting piece coming for the wind. No, that concerns me, guys, because we're legislations, we are vying for office. And I think with that being said, we need to police the policies that are already in place. With that I end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hodge. We'll now have the Honorable Mr. Carden Connor to respond to the question.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's a case of what type of tourism development. If you consider a place like Holland, most of Holland is below sea level. So again, there you've got a number of the engineers and technicians who've adopted a method of how to best utilize what's available to you. And without doubt, here in Anguilla, not just Anguilla, but I think it is a phenomenon around the world that climate change is affecting coastal areas. For us in Anguilla, it means a common sense approach as well. It says that going forward, that we have to be very cautious about what type of building is built and how close to the water's edge. Regarding access to the beaches, and of course, growing up in Anguilla in the early 60s and early 70s, there were no boundaries. You pretty much were free to roam as you wish. And that was a time when Anguillans owned 99.9% of our property. I think when we tend to look today and want to blame government, we really need to look and see if we're going to put or sell some land, are we selling 100%, or are we leaving something to say there's a gateway for our people? But I think going forward, it is important for us that when the planning bill comes out, that is expected to be out pretty soon after we win the next general election. In fact, it was on the table many years ago, and a number of Anguillians objected to it. The fact is they didn't see what our current premier saw for the future. So I think going forward, it is a case of us understanding that how we can best move forward that benefits not just us today, but the future of Anguillians. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Connor. We open the floor for any rebuttals. If there's anyone that would like to add clarity at this time, you can feel free to do so.
First, I'd like to commend Kimberly for pointing out the Viceroy development. I worked at a Viceroy development. And I agree with Kimberly, the manhole that we once know the mermaid hole has been blocked. I'm a firm believer also that when we sit down at that negotiation table, we should do our studies, but not only that, have the technocrats that sit on government tables to be a part of the decision-making processing to protect our beaches. Kimberly have made a very solid point. And for that, I feel humbled to know that she could at least feel the pain of Peel in my time when I grew up in Long Bay Village. And for that, I thank you, Kimberly.
All right. Ms. Fleming, you'd like to make a rebuttal?
I'm not making a rebuttal, just a couple comments. Jamie, thank you for your kind words.
Not a problem.
I wanted to add to the fact that I also grew up around the beach, and I have seen over the years how we have allowed our coastline to be destroyed, and therefore it saddens me, and I have always felt empowered and motivated to speak out and speak up for the protection of our beachfront properties and to ensure that the landowners, the persons who own these lands, get the best value for their money. But not only the best value for their money, they are also empowered to use their lands to their benefit and their family's benefit. And I believe that this is a particular area where government needs to come forward and be supportive of landowners, especially at the negotiation process, where landowners are often disenfranchised in terms of the value, the payments they get for their money. So I am firmly in support of government, and I will be fighting for that when I am elected, to ensure that landowners are not disenfranchised, but also to give them the opportunity and to educate and inform them of the other options that they have in terms of utilizing their land.
Well, I'm definitely in support of any help that can be given. I think it also have to be receptive of the information or the advice that's given. So without doubt, again, having grown up in West End, again, surrounded by beaches, and within the tourism industry, I think, again, it is something that for quite a while, we did not really see the true value in our beaches. It took, suppose, tourism to understand, for us to understand how valuable it is and what a valuable asset it is. But the greatest asset of all is not just the property, it's the people. And to make sure that the people feel that they're part of whatever development that is being made.
Question number 2. With the high prices of land in the District 7 area, what steps can the government of Anguilla undertake to allow young people access to affordable housing? SDG 1, 9, and 11. I will repeat the question. With the high prices of land in the District 7 area, what steps can the government of Anguilla undertake to allow young people access to affordable housing? SDG 1, 9, and 11. You are given 1 minute, to formulate your question. Answer, I apologize.
It's okay. Can I go? There's no need for a thing. I understand that land in Angola is expensive. Particularly in my district, land is highly expensive. And with that being said, is owned mostly by family members. I understand also that the government of the day and the government of past has been in negotiation to purchase property for sporting facilities, and that in itself can create a burden. Creating the opportunity to have land to purchase by the government and then develop that property and then resell to persons of the community in my district at affordable pricing is the only way I see fit that this can actually materialize, because individually it's very difficult. In Anguilla, there's the ability to build buildings under something called the strata lot ownership. That strata lot ownership gives the government of Anguilla the ability to still own the land, but at the same time, they can also have the development to sell portions of those properties, such as an apartment complex. That apartment complex could house 4 or 5 different units, but each unit itself can be sold individually by anyone out there. This can actually give a reduced cost in the housing complex and make it affordable for our Anguillian people, my district people, to own a home in my district.
The debate is also live on Flow TV, ATV, channel 103. Honorable Karagan-Kano.
I think it's one of the prices that we pay for West End these days. I remember many years ago, again growing up in the 60s and 70s, when a number of people east of the welcome sign at the lights in Long Bay would refer to West End or the Western End as being behind God's back. I think then land would have been very cheap down there. The challenge is today is that in that area in West End, which is the tourism capital of Anguilla, it means that the price of land is very high, and it happens worldwide. And it is a high price to pay for anybody in West End who would want to be able to have a government project, in fact, government purchase land. The price is very high. And as Jamie mentioned, in West End, in fact, in Anguilla, a lot of the land, in fact, about 90% of Anguilla's land is owned by Anguillians. So it's family land. And I think it is a case of not just putting a price on it, it is whether or not how is it passed on. You find that a number of families, in fact, most of the time, a lot of family feud comes from over land. So I think if we ourselves, instead of stop looking at government all the time and look inwardly to see what we can do to help government, to help ourselves, would make life a lot easier for us. Because the value of land, again, as I said, in our area, in District 7, or even in places like Santa Ground, will be a lot higher. And that is the high price, I'm afraid, you have to pay when there are those who are prepared to pay a very high price for it. And we all know the challenges that government face. We know it. We know it when government wants to do something for the development of Anguilla, for the extensions in certain places, because if tourism is our main economy, then we need to have our visitors being able to come to Anguilla, come and go. And we know the challenge that government faces right now when government needs to get land for an extension at the airport. So to say the same in West End, it will be a big challenge. But I can totally understand. We have to find a way to help our youth to be able to make accommodation more affordable. I thank you.
The floor is now open for...
I'm sorry, Mr.
I
Kennedy.
do apologize.
Keep going. You're doing
Ms. Fleming?
Thank you. So I have spoken about land and land ownership from the start of my campaign. And it is an area that I feel passionately about, having grown up with the understanding and seeing how land divides families, but also seeing how persons are disenfranchised out of their land. To that end, I believe that everyone, in Anguilla, everyone should have the opportunity to own property on Anguilla if you're born in Anguilla. That's your God-given right, I believe. And especially for our young people who would want to build, maybe they want to start a tourism project, maybe they want to build a home, there should not be barriers to them achieving that. And yes, we are in land in West End is very high, but I believe that government can work with landowners to enter into leasehold agreements that would allow persons to acquire land on a leasehold to own basis. It gives young people the opportunity to have land that they can develop in the manner that they choose, but it also gives the landowner an opportunity to earn income on land that might just be sitting there for years. It is not always about how much money you can get for your property, and that seems to be the going idea in the western end of the island, and it appears to be encouraged from a governmental standpoint from my observations over the years, where landowners are encouraged to sell their land, especially beachfront property, to developers. And for little to no money, because at the end of the day, when you sell your land for a couple $100,000 and you have 6 or 7 family members to split that through, you end up working for the developer on that same property at the end of the day. Additionally, families have land, and I would encourage them to stop and think. It's not always about how much money you can get. You have to look at your children's future, because that is your responsibility to ensure that your children are protected and provided for. So instead of selling that land that you can get maybe $100,000 for, consider deeding it to your children. Additionally, government can work with landowners to negotiate favorable rates for persons, especially young people who are desirous of purchasing land. And thirdly, we can negotiate with banks to offer loans at favorable interest rates that would ensure that persons can get land and own property here in Anguilla. Thank you.
The floor is now open for rebuttals. We will start with Mr. Hodge, if you do desire.
No, I may agree that lease to own is a good thing. I also may agree that the ability to have bank rates reduced and negotiated by the government is also a good thing. But I thought I also misunderstood the question. The question was getting property in order to develop low-income houses, not to actually own land. It was the ability to actually have the government to develop low-income houses in which they can sell or actually lease to these persons that are in the community. That in myself, I believe that ability to take advantage of government funding to purchase those properties under that ability to have a straw lot agreement and develop that land and then sell that land back into the community, sell that property back in the community under that straw lot agreement. That gives the ability of persons out there to own a low-income house. If I'm correct, please let me know I'm wrong.
Mr. Connor?
That's a quick point, is that I think what we found over the years too is that a lot of the development of land around the water's edge. In fact, I think if you go back to the land that was purchased by Chuck Norris, and then the house that was sold, all of a sudden prices went sky high. And I think, not making an excuse for any government, not this current government or past governments, but I think that has been the challenge, where a number of families value the dollar sign rather than building for or helping or assisting youth within the community. And without doubt, it is something that government needs to do. I know there are about 4 houses next to the basketball court in West End that the government would have built a few years back. It was there initially for a short term, but you'll find that families have been there for the best part of 20 years. But again, it is something that I'm sure as we go forward, we're looking to work on. But also, it's playing areas. In fact, the land west of the school, there are 3 acres there that is now being cleared, where government for a number of years have been negotiating with the landowners to develop a playing field for us in West End. And again, as I said, the challenge has always been the cost of, or the value of the land in an area that is of high demand.
Ms. Fleming?
We do recognize that the majority of land on Anguilla is privately owned. And as such, for government to acquire land, it requires finances. And for government to be able to provide affordable housing, access to affordable housing, it means it will require more creative ways of doing so. And therefore, entering into and negotiating with landowners to enter into leasehold agreements for property, for young persons desirous of having homes, I believe is one of the best ways that government can accomplish this, taking into account the government's the nature and the expense of property, but also the fact that government will in some cases need to find funding. So if government is able to negotiate with landowners in order to get land and thereby allowing young persons to have land that they can then build on, because in order to have housing, you must have land. And therefore, it is a win-win. 2 persons are ending up with income. With a benefit from this type of arrangement. You have the young person having the ability to have a home, and you have the landowner earning income. So why not look at that when more than one person is benefiting? It's always about helping as many people as you can. So if that opportunity arises, then that is what government should strive to do.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to our 3rd question. And it reads, Anguilla currently has a climate change policy, but work needs to be done to implement its strategies. What area of alternative energy is best suited to be undertaken in your district? SDG 7. I'll repeat the question. Anguilla currently has a climate change policy, but work needs to be done to implement its strategies. What area of alternative energy is best suited to be undertaken in your district? You have 1 minute to formulate your question, and we will start with Mr. Connor. Formulate your answer. Ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Okay.
I think when you look at the topography of Anguilla, or the shape of Anguilla, in the western end of the island is probably regarded as the most as narrow, I should say, from one side to the other, makes it difficult to have anything other than solar. We've got the ponds in West End. In fact, in 2015, when we got into office, it was a suggestion that to use the West End salt pond to to put panels on solar panels on the pond to be able to link to the national grid. We know that Cuisinart themselves for quite some time had some panels there as well as Frangipani. I think quite a lot of their energy now comes from the solar panels. That is about the best that I would say that would be suitable for an area that has been designed for tourism. And again, as you would consider the pathway to the airport along that area would make it very difficult otherwise. So as it stands in District 7, that would probably be the best option. In other areas, you could probably look at wind turbines on the eastern end of the island. But the question being about District 7, and right now, again, that's an area where solar panels will be the best alternative energy to go forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Connor. We'll now hear from Ms. Fleming.
Can I ask you to repeat the question one more time, please? Thanks.
The question reads, Anguilla currently has a climate change policy, but work needs to be done to implement its strategies. What area of alternative energy is best suited to be undertaken in your district?
So the world over is increasingly moving to renewable energy, and in Anguilla, we are ideally poised to move in this direction. We are surrounded by water. We have the benefit of sunlight and also trade winds. And we are currently facing huge fuel prices, which has escalated the price of electricity. In our West End district, there will be numerous options, I believe, to explore in terms of renewable energy in that sector. And we should look at all areas and see which are best suited. Solar, we know, will work because of the sunlight, but we also have options in wind and water, and these two should be explored to see which are the best options or which combinations can be the best options for West End. And therefore, I would not rule out any at this time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fleming. We now hear from Mr. Hodge.
No, I think it's a straightforward question, as you asking which one. And I think the Cardigan Kana mentioned, I'll go with solar because the demographics said that solar energy can sit upon the building itself. But I'll take it a step further. When we encourage solar energy, it reduces the cost of electricity bills to our community, based at the same time to that property itself. Why not do we encourage those investors to increase the wages of those employees that are working so hard for an honest dollar every day at our properties? They're taking so much, and at the same time, they're saving money, saving from Anglic. That in turn benefits us a lot. I'm just saying, solar energy is something I'll go with. I agree with Cardigan Kana, but I'm just saying, let's give the opportunity that wages itself can be encouraged to be increased.
Thank you very much. We'll now have rebuttals or clarifications. We'll start with Mr. Connor.
It's always good to agree on something. That's all I've got to say.
Ms. Fleming.
The Anguilla Progressive Movement has a policy for renewable energy, and especially with a focus on our youth, whereby they can have businesses in the renewable energy fields. So when we think about renewable energy, we are not only thinking about the benefit that it will give us in our pockets, but we are also looking at how we can turn that sector into gainful employment for our young people and anyone who chooses to operate in that sector.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hodge?
I have no rebuttals. It's fine with me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question number 4. Due to the present world health care crisis, issues of job security are presently plaguing the mind of young people and Anguillians as a whole. What innovative ideas can the government of Anguilla incorporate to ensure job security? SDG 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 11, and 15. I will repeat. Due to the present world health care crisis, issues of job security are presently plaguing the mind of young people and Anguillians as a whole. What innovative ideas can the government of Anguilla incorporate to ensure job security? SDG 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 11, and 15. You have for 1 minute to formulate your answer. We will start with Ms. Fleming when you are ready.
Anguilla was facing an unemployment and underemployment problem before this current crisis that we are in. And this crisis has only exacerbated the situation. In particular, our hotel sector workers have been greatly disenfranchised in terms of job security, and it has gone unaddressed for quite a long period, and now the hotel workers in particular find themselves out of jobs with no idea as to when that their jobs will be back. And therefore, it is incumbent on government to ensure that persons who are most likely and to be affected by crises such as pandemics, natural disasters, and the likes are always protected. To that end, I believe that we as governments on a whole have to look at putting in place programs that ensure that persons affected will always have an opportunity to tap into funding to see them through times of crisis when they may not be able to work. The Social Security Fund should have been one of these areas, but unfortunately, that fund has been used for everything else except being in place to secure persons and assist persons during times of disaster. So it is my hope that we can learn from this particular crisis and know that we cannot wait until something happens to ensure the safety and security of our workers, be that in the government our healthcare workers who are our frontline workers, who at times are often overlooked, but also the wider community, because when natural disasters happen, when pandemics occur and other crises, everyone becomes affected, and therefore everyone will require assistance. It's not about picking and choosing and having you apply for and being waited upon to be eligible. It's about ensuring that everyone has an opportunity to have
Thank you.
access.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We will now hear from Mr. Hodge.
Job security. Very difficult question to answer. But you have to understand that it takes a two-phase part, the employer and the employee. When you hit the employee to ensure job security, you're going to affect the employer who has to ensure the employee has a job. Because with no income coming in, it directly affects the employer. And in turn, you lose an investment opportunity by whether an investment by the employer or tourism investment comes to Anguilla. Let's look at West End. If we take the time out to divorce our market and go into a new area, agriculture has been touted for many times. Here are some ideas. I've looked at persons in my district. I sat down with someone as mere young as 18. She just turned 18, and she came with a brilliant idea. Why don't we link China to Anguilla? Linking China to Anguilla, no, you may say startled, but she linked China and Anguilla for only the purpose of manufacturing, clean energy, having a chance to assemble products and then ship out to the United States. That makes our market diverse. That in itself brings in 200 jobs, or possibly more, give or take, more or less. Then agriculture. We've had the agricultural policies being in place, drafted by Mr. Pat Vanderpool himself in 2019. Secure government lands under the National Trust is one of these ideas. Create agro-tourism linkages is another idea. The commitment to establish the central processing plants for meat. I love the opportunity to grow goats, pigs, and even chickens. And this gives me the chance to sit down there and realize that if I can have a centralized meat processing plant, I can encourage young people to also secure the opportunity to not only be a job secure by themselves, but be employers of their own, developing their own businesses. No, we go over the fishing. We've touted fishing day in and day out. But look at the thing on this. 200 nautical miles not used. How can we benefit that 200 nautical miles? Here's what my suggestion is. Putting those fishermen to take the ability to focus on other just drop fishing and line fishing and snapping, which I do, focus on tuna fishing. Link that tuna fishing market over to Puerto Rico, which have a tuna factory that takes no less than 500 pounds of tuna per day to manufacture tins of tuna. This gives the ability for those fishermen to go out there, hard work, and catch tuna. No, this is not by the pound. This then says by the grade of tuna. No, we have an area called Tuna Bank. If you do your studies, during this time, it crosses the ability to have the trade winds, the trade of that tuna bank, move along to catch the biggest bluefin tunas you'll find. If we can catch tuna and sell at a better grade, who knows, our Anguillan people could become millionaires of selling just tuna. This is how we produce that we can have job security, not just for the employee, but the employer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hodge. We will now hear from Mr. Connor.
Yes, job security is something that I think every government and every employee would like to have. I think over the years, before tourism, most Anguillans would have gone overseas in order to earn a living. But from the early 80s, from about 84 with Maluhanda, gave Anguillans an opportunity to stay at home and be able to earn and pretty much stay with their families. And since then, tourism has grown. Now the challenge always is going to be, how do we move on from tourism? In fact, not a case of moving on, but how can we get the best out of it? You know, one of the points that was made was about job security. And I think that the Minister of Labor has taken huge steps to make that happen. The job security for a number of our people who worked at Four Seasons, and after a year, whether they had been written up once or not, or actually lost their jobs, which was very unfair to somebody. If you feel, if I haven't done anything wrong, why should I lose my job? So again, that is where government can really help, and that's where government is helping. Again, as I said about being versatile, a number of Anguillians over the years have been, some would say, jack of all trades. So it says that if you are in the hotel industry and the season goes down, if you had a hurricane, but if you can grow on your own land that you own, and most of us own some land somewhere, and again, it helps with being able to have water that's available so you can become registered as a farmer. So again, that helps you to grow your own. Most people in our area, virtually every house, is a fisherman or own a boat at some point. So Anguillians, especially those in West End, can feed themselves. So I think that really helps. You talk about job security. Another point that was made, that I think as you go forward, we ourselves as employees need to do the best we can in times when we are struggling. With Hurricane Irma, Social Security was not set up for unemployment, but relief was given in 2017. In 2019, with the COVID-19, again, it wasn't set up for that. But I think a lot of our people would realize that the investment that they would have made, and I often said that a tax and investment into your country, there's a lot to be learned from the pandemic right now, that if you make an investment, you're actually investing in your future as well. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Connor. The floor is now open for rebuttals. We will first start with Ms. Fleming.
So when we speak about job security and we speak about representation and government looking out for our workers, especially in the hospitality sector, my colleague mentioned that the labor minister had made representation in terms of securing persons' jobs, I'm paraphrasing. However, currently you have contract workers in our hospitality sector who are on one-year contracts, thereby making it very restrictive for them to obtain loans and other funding that they may need. Additionally, we have our hospitality workers crying out for representation on a regular basis because of the effects, because of how they are treated in the hospitality sector, but because they feel they have no one to look out for them and represent their interests, they remain quiet. And you find that we are in a huge, significant, real situation, where we have underemployment, yet we have work permits being given out. Over 4,000 work permits having been issued to persons who are in here when taking up jobs that could have gone to locals and other persons living and qualified on this island. Finally, when we talk about job security, we have our fishing sector, where our fishermen...
Thank you, Ms. Fleming. Your time is up. Mr. Hodge?
Job security. I would like to take the moment out to understand that people out there own businesses. I sit down here and I look through the crowd and I saw the young lady that gave me that brilliant idea. And I come to also realize that our father's a businessman, and my father's a businessman. And many people here in Anguilla are too businessmen. But who protects the business people out there that also wants to do businesses? It's twofold. It just can't fall on one end. The next thing is the fact that we're out there fighting for office. It's our job to bring our ideas to that table in that negotiation process. And some of those ideas, when we sign important MOUs, are the ability to mimic what has actually been done at the Malihana Hotel. What they did is the ability to sit and say, we're going to actually insure our property. That insurance was able to help persons in Malihana Hotel and other that property itself to make some money. Now, insurance is a benefit to anybody out there. And once you insure those properties, you get a chance that you can, and I'm going to say it this way, it's good to actually insure with local persons. I see Mr. Clement Davis on over on that end, and that's a good person to go look over and say, I'll insure, I'll force that business to our Anguillan people. And that is my say. I understand my colleagues want to ensure that job security is one of those things that we fight for. But I'm saying is, we have to also bring those ideas to ensure that employers' jobs also are being secured, that they can also make the revenue and make the money that they've invested in our island also. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge. Mr. Connor?
Yeah, thank you again. I think as a government, and especially within the Ministry of Tourism, over the last couple of years, I think we've tried, not only tried, I think we've done our best to create some job security within the industry. The fact that in 2017, before Hurricane Irma, we were able to negotiate the sale of Cap Choluca to Belmont Cap Choluca, which created over 500 jobs in the build-out, and then a further 350 jobs just at Cap Choluca. And if you consider the spin-offs from that, that is another means of job security. In 2019, our figures, in fact, 2016, with 79,239 stay-over arrivals to Anguilla, I think that was the best until 2019, where we had 95,375 stay-over arrivals to Anguilla. So as far as government is concerned within the tourism industry, we're doing the best that we can to be able to, in fact, for 2020, the months of January and February had the highest number of dollars going into the treasury. So despite the fact when others will say that we're underemployment at that point in time, it says that it was the best in Anguilla's tourism history since records began back in 1993. The other point too is that I think at times employees as well can do a lot more to help job security. All around the world, there are unions that are there to help. And I think it is about time, especially within the service industry. In fact, it's been talked about for a number of years, but they still haven't been able to have it implemented. So I think that is something where employees themselves can go a long way to make sure they've got job security. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Connor.
Thank you very much. I would like to remind the listening audience that you can send your questions for the audience questions section. We are going to our fifth question. You can post your questions if you're online to the National Youth Council Facebook page, and we also have National Youth Council members in the audience that you can pass on your questions to. Question number 5 reads as follows. With the limited finances in Anguilla, government spending must be carefully allocated to priority areas. Hence, what areas must the government specifically prioritize scholarship funding towards to boost sustainable national and economic development? Where will funding for these scholarships be generated from? SDG 4, 8, 11, and 17. Again, with limited finances in Anguilla, government spending must be carefully allocated to priority areas. Hence, what areas must the government specifically prioritize scholarship funding towards to boost sustainable national and economic development? And where will funding for these scholarships be generated from? SDG 4, 8, 11, and 17. We will start this round with Mr. Hodge. We allot you 1 minute to formulate your answer.
Can I start?
Go ahead.
I'll start on how we can gain money. When I look at areas of the budget, there's water royalties, which actually depict the water extraction from our water wells and water in the sea itself. When we look at that, it disappoints me to know that we only bring in $450,000 a year. That's what the numbers show. But when you look at Cuisinart, they take 1 million gallons of water 1 year, $500,000 of water 1 day, right? Just to water plants and grass. If I tax it at 6 cents a gallon, that's $62,400 a day. On a yearly basis, that equates to approximately $22.7 million. Take that into account for a 5-year term. That's $113.8 million converted into EC. $305 million into our treasury. No scholarship funds. We boast tourism, but why don't we boast the development of our education system? Teachers out there want to also be educated, and they also want to have the chance to be educated. Because if you educate the teachers out there, we can take that money and educate our youth. Our youth need to know that they can be educated locally. Now if I take the ability to look at funding, I'll take the ability to look at what I'm going to do with that funding. But if we take in police the other areas of $1.4 million that we spend on a yearly basis, this itself generates the ability to come in. Now I look at sports. In that same budget, I look at 2015 to 2020. And I'm disappointed to read that we've only spent in 2015 $835, right, in training. Then I go over to look again that we've been plateaued at $700 per year. This is how we spend in sports training? Come on. I beg to differ that we can develop the sports tourism in Anguilla and make it something that we can develop on. Let's look over in the area in which Daniel used. Shara Proctor. We've had even Omar Banks and Honorable Canagan Kana, which went off to be a great cricketer. I am saying, let's focus on our youth. Let's focus on our education. Let's focus on the people of Anguilla. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hodge. Next, we'll have Mr. Kana to give his answer.
Yep. I think it is a case of understanding what is the high priority at that point in time. I think right now you realize that the greatest need in Anguilla is the funding goes to health. There was a point in time where we'll say that we want to go out and promote and compete with a number of the other islands in the Caribbean who all at one point were probably those who would export, fruit and vegetables. Now they're all into tourism. For a number of those in the tourism industry, they always felt that we in Anguilla did not invest enough money into tourism because, again, they felt that in a competitive world out there, it's a case of how are you sitting at a table and what are you doing in order to make it happen. I'm proud to say that from 2015 to 2020, at this point in time, the marketing skills of the tourist board and our agents were able to make sure that Anguilla became #1 in the Caribbean, Bahamas, and Bermuda with travel and leisure's readers, and that is 29 million readers. So again, as a destination or as a region, you find that the Caribbean is high on the list, but anybody who wants to visit the region, any region for that matter, you want to know which is the island of choice. The challenge, again, always is where do you get the extra money from? It is a case of when you're limited on what spending you have. And in fact, since 2009, Anguilla has had some challenges. Since the world crisis, that had some challenges. A number of people would love to think you can spend, but there's a case of where do you get it from? Where do you find the funds that you can actually invest free-willed, as you would say? But again, to reiterate, the fact is, it is the case of what is the need at that point in time. And as I said, right now, the health of the nation with this pandemic is exactly where a lot of the funding has gone. One of the things that we must appreciate, our Premier often talks about building bridges, and the challenges that we face in 2017 and again in 2020 would suggest if you have a good relationship with people, you build bridges, the chances are they will come and help. The number of international countries will be prepared to come and give, but it comes at a price that sometimes you can't afford. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Connor. Again, I must ask the audience to please keep the noise to a minimum while the candidate is speaking. We've been doing an amazing job tonight. Please let us maintain that. Next, we'll have Ms. Fleming to give her answer to this question.
So currently we have a comprehensive system which is conceptually a great idea. However, for it to be truly comprehensive, there must be improvements. We have to ensure that we capture the abilities of young people across all sectors, academic, technical, vocational, to ensure that each and every young person, each student has the best opportunity to accomplish their full potential and to be successful in whatever endeavors they choose to undertake. To this end, scholarship funding must be provided for persons who wish to take part in alternative and non-traditional educational pursuits, such as creative arts, industrial skills, such as carpentry, electronics, masonry, but also in the tech field, in e-commerce, in the development of apps and blockchain technologies and the likes, financial services, which is one of our sectors, our income-generating sectors in Anguilla. It's actually the third largest income generator for the government of Anguilla, generating about 10 million EC dollars each year. Of that, 9.5 million estimated goes into the consolidated fund of the government. And so in order to ensure that our young people are able to contribute to our economy and to maintain and sustain our economy, we need to ensure that our young people are fully equipped and qualified and have the best education possible, but also all the opportunities needed to get there. And for government, this should be a top priority because your people are your greatest resource, and therefore you need to invest in your people. They cannot be given put on the back burner. We cannot say that we do not have the funding because of whatever the circumstance may be. Our job is to invest in our people. If our people are invested in, they are empowered, they are educated, they have the best skill sets, then our economy will grow, because it's the people who drive economies and countries.
Now we will have clarifications or rebuttal, and we'll start with Mr. Hodge.
I would like to say first that I thought we were going to start with Cardigan Connor, but it's okay. I'll start still regardless of what it is. But let's go over on the concept of vegetables and fruits. You mentioned it earlier, but it saddens me to look back at the 2019 policy with a vision statement that actually has the U.S. sitting with Pat Vanderpool begging to have the opportunity and numbers be financing agriculture in Anguilla by this administration. But let's go on. All I know is facts and numbers. Let's go over on the development of sports. We have gotten on the budgetary address. On these budgets, we've seen that $75,000 to $180,000 has been allocated for the development of youth and training. But here's the thing, I still can't see how that number moved from 835 to plateau at 700. I just can't see it. And it hurts me, because at the end of it, when I look at it from that perspective, who then helps our children? Who then helps the education process? Our teachers are burdened, even more so during COVID-19. They sit at home and the expenses are going up to the roof. I am saying, let's ensure we put back the emphasis and monies that I generated from that water extraction based on water royalties in our budget to help the people grow by educating our youth, and our economy will grow. It's hand in hand. Find the money, invest the money. I'm finding it, and I'm investing in the youth education via scholarships, joint education. I thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Mr. Connor.
Yes, I think regarding scholarships in sports, what you find is that in football, there are scholarships. The Anguilla Football Association offers scholarships. The Anguilla Amateur Athletics Association, again, the scholarships, number of young athletes, track athletes, are on scholarships in the U.S. In fact, I was able to get a scholarship for a young man from West End, the first time that a young man from West End was able to get a scholarship to the U.S. And also even with cricket. Over the last few years, Dimitri Adams had a 5-year scholarship in England. And there's a gentleman in the audience today, tonight, who helped with another cricket scholarship at the University of the West Indies, and that youngster is now working within government. What you find is within sports and scholarships is there's a lot of the governing bodies, the world governing bodies, offers that. And quite often that governments don't get involved in sports, the administration of sports. A number of people feel that when things don't quite work out in sports, it's government to blame, but it's the international bodies that are the governing bodies of sports, not just here in Anguilla, but throughout the world. So again, when it comes to scholarships in sports, again, I think that has been well sorted. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Ms. Fleming.
So government's role, as I stated earlier, is to ensure that its people are developed to their highest potential. We cannot pass the buck to other persons. Governments cannot disassociate themselves from that responsibility. It is government's responsibility to ensure that the funding, the necessary funding, is in place for persons who wish to avail, for young persons in particular who wish to avail themselves of this funding. That, if that entails being prudent with the funds, the limited resources that are available, that is what is necessary. Prudence comes in many ways, and sometimes governments have to forgo certain luxuries and certain things that they may want personally to ensure that their people are well taken care of. For example, when government spends over $750,000 on vehicles, which it was in vehicle rentals, and that money could have been very well placed in funds for scholarships for young persons wishing to avail themselves of that. When governments go and lend 260,000 EC dollars to buy new vehicles, that money could have been funded into educational training for young persons who wish to avail themselves of. So to say that that government doesn't have the money and they can then depend on external organizations is passing the buck instead of taking the responsibility and doing the job that government is called upon to do.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fleming. At this time, we are going to be taking questions from the audience. Please be reminded that you now have 2 minutes to answer the question and 1 minute to give a rebuttal. The first question is, if elected, what are the top 3 things you will do for your district? If elected, what are the top 3 things you will do for your district? And we will start with Mr. Connor.
In fact, I would like to think that I've, to this point, done quite a lot for my district. And there are a number of things that would have been started but still have to be completed. I would love to see and would want to implement it to have sidewalks in our area. I think it is, apart from being aesthetically looking impressive, it is also a safety mechanism. Because too often, when people are walking along the road, almost it is like walking along the road, it would suggest that the safety mechanism is required. To see the playing field west of the school that has been cleared, to see that come through fruition. And it's not just a playing field for the youth or the school, but for the community. Again, we talk about lack of government land in West End because most of the land there has been owned by the people. So that, again, is something I'd like to see. The other thing I would like to see happen and follow through on it, even the government has already started negotiations on that, is to see a public road to the wharf in the cove. Not a private road over someone's property, but a public road so that not just the fishermen, but any Anguillan for the tourism industry can have access to the wharf. A public road, not a road that is owned by somebody else.
Next, please. Thank you. Next, we will hear from Ms. Fleming.
In District 7, there are many, as the tourism sector, the tourism hub, the breadbasket of Anguilla. West End, District 7 requires many projects, or have many projects that can be undertaken, such as upgrades to our roads, the beautification of our streets. But I think 3 of the key areas that I would like to focus on and I envision seeing bringing to fruition once the proper assessments and feasibility studies and such are done would be a technical training center for young persons in the community, whereby we tap into the knowledge and skill sets of our community members who are retired in various fields, such as education, plumbing, electrical, but also manufacturing, because we have a huge Spanish community, and for the years we have neglected to incorporate them and to utilize their skill sets which they bring. Additionally, we need a community center for our community where young and old can come together and socialize and share, where the young people can learn from the older folks and the older folks can learn from the younger people. And thirdly, we require a triad center. Our clinic is currently underutilized, and with us being in the heart of the tourism sector, the need for urgent medical attention where persons who require that can be stabilized in the shortest possible time is of paramount importance. and therefore that is an essential necessity which the community has been clamoring for years, and which was promised by our current representative in his bid in 2015.
Next, we'll get our answer from Mr. Hodge.
Through research, which I'm only going to bring.
Hold a moment. We're asking for silence from the audience. Thank you very much. You can proceed, Mr. Hodge.
Through research, I think my colleague Kimberly Fleming has to understand that this government has moved the clinic that we sit back, that Mr. Katgankana once was would be renamed the Agnes Agatha Richardson Clinic. That has now been destroyed. There will be no more Agatha Clinic anymore. It be known as the Sotil Polyclinic. No, if you go back to the 2010 and 2000 administration, they actually negotiated to have that polyclinic be 300 feet away from the Life Impact Center, which is a church. Why has not been materialized? Now let's go over to my colleague when he mentioned me, which I feel sad about, because why? I built the road, I started the road, projects of which I now understand that he is saying, hey, Jamie Hodge is a private property. I agree, private property. But here's the thing, it has to be first private, then developed, then surveyed, and then transferred to government. It's a process. It doesn't wake up the morning and just happen just like that. I'm sorry. Then let's go over to what I think outside of that. My last thing is the development of the Spanish community. I agree, but the Spanish community is my family. And them being my family, I want to see that they have a chance to enjoy baseball in the community. No, lands is hard, so we use the Carnation Park. I've played there recently as far back as Sunday. I figured that I'm playing a game that they enjoy. But not only that, they offer scholarships in the development that you can have scouts come and scout in Anguilla. This could benefit a signage of upward millions of dollars to our people of my district. And that is what I'm hoping to fight for. Because this really, really means a lot to me. I'm sorry, Mr. Kana, I don't understand it. My apologies, and I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Hodge. You now have Thank you very much, Mr. Hodge. You now have 1 minute to provide clarification or rebuttal. Go ahead, Mr. Connor.
Thank you very much indeed. Again, what I would say, again, when we talk about bringing the youth and senior citizens together, you find that the Anguilla Made Arts and Crafts Center offers exactly that. That again is something that might have been in the pipelines for years, but it has come to fruition. Regarding the Spanish community, or the Spanish-speaking community, they're not just my colleagues' family, they're all of our families. And one of the things I must applaud the Minister of Immigration, the Honorable Cora Richardson Hodge, is that she has made a point of recognizing the grandchildren, and majority of them would be from Santo Domingo or the Dominican Republic, as Anguillians. So you first have to be embraced, and then it's a case of how can we move forward. I thank you very much indeed.
I really don't like belaboring points, but I please have to ask the audience to refrain from making any noise while a candidate is speaking. We'll ask Ms. Fleming to go ahead and make her rebuttal or clarification. You have 1 minute to do so.
While I recognize that we do have that there are plans in place, the groundwork has been started for the building of a polyclinic in South Hill, I still firmly believe that we do require a triage unit in District 7 for the reasons I stated previously. We are in the tourism sector. We are the heart of the tourism sector, and the need, when we have tourists or other persons injured, the need for urgent attention is of paramount importance. A couple months ago, a friend of mine needed to be rushed to the hospital, and because of the distance to get the ambulance to come to her and to go back, I had to take her. And it was then that was brought home clearly to me, because even to go from where she lived to South Hill would have been a lapse in time that was critical. And so therefore, I will still be supportive and all out for a triad center in the community.
I agree with Kimberly Fleming. But at the same time, like I say, it wasn't the plans. 2010, 2015, these were the draft plans, 200 feet away from the Life Impact Center. But let's go back over. I want to also say that I need an ambulance in my district. It's an urgent need for an ambulance. Just as the instance she may mention, we need it. But Grandchildren Act, I thank you, Cora Trustin Hearts, for the hard work you've done in that end. But it just doesn't sit with the grandchildren of Spanish people. There's also a person like my mother who I would never born in Anguilla. So her children, her grandchildren can actually get rights in Anguilla. And I thank that. So I'm saying, thank you, Cora Trustin Hearts, for that. But the thing is, Mr. Connor, I'm sad to know that you're only looking at that, but you touted on the campaign trail that you're glad to know that these persons will come back and vote for you. You touted this, and you touted this. I am sorry. I just cannot accept that it feels to me like it was almost as if it was a barter agreement. My apologies. I thank you.
Next question from the audience. The question reads, what is your stance on the premise that workers at Cap Juluca and NCBA do not have job security? I repeat, what is your stance on the premise that workers at Cap Juluca and NCBA do not have job security?
Who's on?
We are going to start with Ms. Fleming.
Sorry.
You have 2 minutes to respond to the question.
The current government has touted much about the preserving of jobs at 300. I mean, there are the signs on the road, you can't miss them. Save 350 jobs at Cap Juluca. And yet, when I speak with persons who worked at Cap Juluca and who are currently working at Cap Juluca, they lament the dismal job conditions they are in, where they are forced to compete with persons who have been given work permits for jobs that they are more than qualified to do. We have managers who are now apprentices to persons who were given work permits, and these persons are training the work permit holder who is supposedly the senior manager. So we cannot claim to have job security when our local Anguillians and other persons resident here are disenfranchised and in some cases totally alienated from taking advantage of and getting the best jobs available in this sector. Additionally, we have NCBA where they were promised that no one would lose their jobs. And yet we find that more than half of the employees at NBA were let off. And not only that, but they also lost their pensions, which is to one great extent job security, because you know you look forward to your pension when you are retired.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fleming. Mr. Hodge, you can answer.
I agree, Ms. Fleming. or the position she's taken in respect to the loss of jobs in CBA by some promises. But I want to also bring to light that it's still a bridge bank. And it being a bridge bank means it's still open for negotiations. Those negotiations affect loved ones that I have working at that bank. And at the end of the day I want to ensure that we can fight for that bank to ensure we have job security for those people as it secures Anguillan people. But let's go over to Capchaluca. I spoke about insurances, and that in itself secures jobs on an insurance basis. And I ain't saying, when you push job security and insurances and you put that money in the hands of D3 enterprises, you help Anguillan people. But at the end of the day, when we look at those areas, I want to say just this one little small comment. I've seen NCBA, which was once NBA, and CCB, in which my colleague pointed out the pension plans and all these nice stuff. What I'm saying is this. When I go into office, when I take up that time to be in office, I'm going to fight for those pension plans. I'm going to fight for that bridge negotiation bank to ensure that I can actually have them to know that my promises mean something. I'm not going to be the empty promises that we see out there on a day-to-day basis. Not today, you're going to be working, and then tomorrow you're going to be lost a job. I am saying I'm willing to walk in the negotiation process during that bridge bank when it's possibly sold to someone, whether Anguillan people or an international banker itself. I thank you.
Next, we'll have Mr. Connor answer the question.
Yeah, job security is always a challenge. You know, it is something that we, as I said, we'd all would love to feel that we can definitely follow through on. I think that is the intention that every government would love to think that they can implement when they sit and negotiate with any employer. But there are circumstances that would raise its head, and there are times you have to backtrack on that. Regarding the pensions, it's not a loss of the pensions of the employees at NBA or CCB. It is a case that process is still in place. You know, so I think it is important to understand that as much as you want to get things done now, that there is a process that takes place. And of course, whether it's Capchaluca or any employer where you feel that the local is being disenfranchised, I think you cannot be happy about that. So I think it is important for us to understand and appreciate that as government, you continue to negotiate with the employers to make sure that your employees, the employees of the Anguillians, can feel that you're working in their behalf. And as going forward, I'd like to also think that with the corporations that comes to Anguilla, it also gives Anguillians a chance to go worldwide as well and gain from the experiences that they can get worldwide. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Connor. We now will have rebuttals for 1 minute, starting with Ms. Fleming.
While I hear what my colleague, the Honorable Mr. Connor is saying, I have to disagree with him. The role of government is not to negotiate with employers in terms of how workers are treated. The role of government is to mandate to employers to employers how government ought to be treated. I worked with a law firm, and the first question they required of us was to provide our labor code so that they know what the rules are in relation to employment in our country. So, and this is a law firm, so that tells me that when an employer comes into your country, he should not be dictating how the employees are treated. And government should not be negotiating with the employer. Government should be saying, these are the rules, and you work within those rules.
Thank you, Ms. Fleming. We'll now hear from Mr. Hodge.
Thank you. Negotiation. That is something that takes a great skill, but not like playing cricket. I think at the end of the day, we have to take the time out to understand the both sides of the table. But when we take the time to look at something else, I want to sit and say, when we take the NBA, and CCB pension and directly look at it being a litigation matter, that is not a process being in place. That's a courthouse matter. So that means that moving forward, whoever government comes in power will have to deal with that legal matter that sits on their doorstep. I don't want it, but if I get it, and when I get it, I'm going to fight to ensure that I pay that money back through the ideas I mentioned earlier. This money is being taken into account. I have never seen a banking report. A lot of want to see it. And if I see it, it gives me a chance to go a better negotiating process to move forward with. But right now, I can't negotiate what I haven't seen. I thank you.
We'll give Mr. Khanna the opportunity to respond.
Again, as I said, I think it is vitally important that any government, for that matter, looks out for the best interests of the employees, in fact, of their nationals. I still do believe that you have to sit and negotiate with anybody. At the end of the day, you can decide exactly what rules and regulations you want to put in place. But again, it is a case of working with whoever comes to the island and prepared to invest in Anguilla. We really have to sit and talk to them and not just dictate to them.
Our next question. What successes have you had in leadership that qualifies you to lead others? I repeat the question. What successes have you had in leadership that qualifies you to lead others? We will start with Mr. Hodge. You have 2 minutes to respond to the question.
I think leadership is a ability to point in the right direction for us. And I've actually had the success to move from a bellman to a general manager. I've had the success to do my own business. I've had the success in areas in which I myself was a football player, where I had captains of the team as well. So I think that leadership qualities is just the ability to move that person from a state of which they are today to a state which they have never been before. And that in itself makes you a good leader. Some of us want to do different types of leadership, which comes across dictatorship. But for me, I'm content with that form of leadership. I thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Mr. Khanna.
Sure. Thank you. I think I go back to the early 90s, as I said, when I first came back home to Anguilla for the development of the youth in sports, mainly in cricket. And I think what is important is that the testimonies of a number of our, not just athletes, not just our cricketers, but those who would have been part of the program that I ran, not on my own, but again, I was the leader of that. So a number of the youngsters from the age of 9 in primary school, we talk about rules and about what sport can do for you, the development of sport. Again, when you talk about rules, you mentioned earlier about what the rules are here tonight. If my youngsters that I worked with from the early 90s were here, you wouldn't have to repeat yourself over and over again. That is a quality that you can take anywhere you go in the world. The fact is that, and one of the beauties for me, in a sense, leaving here at 15, going to England, playing in Australia for 15 years, is that if you have the right rules, if you understand the disciplines, then wherever you go in the world, you'll be greatly appreciated. And I'm quite proud to say that a number of the youngsters that I've worked with were able to get teams in England, especially in cricket, also being part of leading the Anguilla Commonwealth Games team from 2002. So again, each time you leave these shores, you're the person responsible. And the key is to ask who have you mentored? I think that is the thing, because that's the only way you can pass the baton on in life. It doesn't stop with me. It stops with In fact, it doesn't stop. It keeps going around and around. Thank you.
We now take a response from Ms. Fleming.
So I started working at the age of 15 in a hospitality property. And over the years, I have worked in numerous sectors across Anguilla, from government, banking, legal, financial services, and now as an entrepreneur. And throughout that entire process, that whole period of my life, I have been called upon to mentor others, to train, to encourage. And I think that leadership is about empowering those who you are tasked with bringing along, those persons who are put in your care to be and to reach their full potential. And I believe that I can comfortably say that persons who have trained under me, who have worked with me, who currently work with me, do business with me, can speak to my leadership qualities and know that I always look out and strive for the best for everyone, because I recognize if I am to be successful as a leader, the persons who are under my task, I have to also ensure that they are successful.
You can have 1 minute if you'd like to share any additional information.
All I want to say is that a leader we should also look to inspire. As a young man, and myself, I've been inspired by a lot of persons in my community. I've inspired by someone that opened a restaurant recently in Charles Sharkey's. But I've also been inspired by persons like my cousin O'Leary, who worked very hard to prove himself that he can actually do something that no one has ever done before in the entertainment business. Eyes Wide Shut is a product that we've seen has actually taken ends on meat. And days away from now, he's going to be the main pioneer in Westfest. I'm saying we have to inspire. And I'm willing to sit down there and say that we need to inspire. As men in this community, we need to know that we can point the direction of our youth in the right course, to know that we can reduce crime, change the mentality our men has, and most importantly, assist the women that has been the heads of our households for a very long time. Thank you.
Mr. Connor?
I'm not sure how much more I can add. Again, my record there speaks for itself.
Ms. Fleming?
I'll pass. That's nothing more.
Thank you. We will have one final question from the audience, and then we will take the closing remarks. Question reads, can you see yourself working in a coalition government? Can you see yourself working in a coalition government? You have 2 minutes to respond to this question, starting with Mr. Connor.
Can I see myself? Well, of course you can. Of course you can. It is not my first choice. But the thing is that what I believe, I'm a big team man. I'm a big team man. I always say that over and over again. And at the end of the day, it is what's in the best interest of your country. If you put your hand up and say that you want to do what's best for your country, it's not always going to be your choices. They're going to be tough challenges. And what I love about the team I have is that with all the challenges that we face from 2015 to today, we're still together. All elected members are still together. If you look at past or previous governments, there's been a lot of fragmentation. You know, even you go back to the Bible, Jesus needed 12 disciples to help him with his work. With the Anguilla United Front and our premier, all we're asking for are 11. That's all we are asking for. But would I work with a coalition government? Again, as I said, it is about what is in the best interests of the island. I thank you.
We'll take a response from Ms. Fleming.
As a member of the Anguilla Progressive Movement, we are a movement about change, about empowering young people. We actually have 3 young persons on our slate as candidates, and I have all confidence that the Anguilla Progressive Movement will be the choice of the people in this upcoming general elections. So, to speak about coalitions at this stage, when we are looking to bring home all of our candidates, is, I believe, a bit premature, because it is our intention to win all of our seats.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fleming.
Let me answer. I think given the ability that I'm an independent candidate, I think that question is geared to me. But let me attempt to answer the question with history. The APP, AUM formed the APM, which Kimberley is now a part of, a coalition government, a coalition party. When you look over at Carter and Connor, the ANA and the ADP was actually formed the Anguilla United Front in 2000, a coalition government. I am saying I am an independent candidate, and I know every person vying for office, including Kimberley and Carter, care about Anguilla. I am saying we all are team players, and we want the best thing for Anguilla. But my thing is this: we also want real representation, and with real representation, it comes to Jamie Hodge. And with Jamie Hodge, we want to know the end. We want to know that we're going to forge our way forward to ensure that in any coalition government, the people of my district will be represented. I am Jamie Hodge, an independent candidate under the symbol of dolphin for District 7. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hodge. I'd like to give a moment for applause, but please, we would like to proceed with any further information or rebuttals from our candidates, starting with Mr. Connor.
Again, I reiterate what I said. I think, of course, if you have to, then you go out and do it. But I think what is important about forming a team is that you know who you're working with. You know, it's not an arranged marriage that you turn up at the altar and then you find out that, hey, listen, I can't deal with that person. I think one of the things that, again, I'm happy about our team is that we all know each other very, very well. We've got experience, and that counts. It counts. That is the stability that you'll take going forward. Of course, we could talk about mixing and match mix and match, but the point about it is that it's almost like a relationship. When you hit the first stumbling block, are you going to go the other way, or are you going to decide to work through it? You work through it when you know that person well. Again, my first choice would be to have our team, all 11, because again, as we've proven over the last 5 years, is we work well as a team. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Connor. We'll now have Ms. Fleming to give our rebuttal or additional information.
I just will agree with Mr. Connor on the point that when you work with a team where you are a cohesive unit and where you share common goals, visions for your country and you have the same passion and love for your country, those are the persons that you want to be in government with. And we have that in the Anguilla Progressive Movement team. And therefore, I still maintain that I have all confidence that our team, Anguilla Progressive Movement, will be elected in the upcoming general elections.
Mr. Hodge?
I would like to add, I'm not a part of that team. The team I wish to be married to the district of my district, District 7. And when I go there campaigning, I'm campaigning the ideas of my district. When you sit in these debate rooms, we clearly aiming to hear the candidates and what ideas they have to offer when they join whichever team they hope to be in and bring to the table. The reason for that is because in any campaign trail, individuals can have ideas. We could be married for 100 years and still not know each other by one person coming together. So I'm saying, I don't need to be married to a team. I need to be married to the people. Because if we are touting that we are team players, I'm a team player. Sit down and look back and say, you're willing to work with any team once your vision's being shared. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge. We'll now take your closing statements. We'll start with Ms. Fleming. You have 3 minutes to give your closing statement. You can proceed now.
So I have put myself forward to be the voice for the persons in District 7, for those who cannot speak out for themselves or for those who are unable to do so. And I am prepared to stand up and speak for District 7 to represent them and to be their voice. We are clearly in need of proper representation in our community. We need to ensure that we move District 7 forward and to ensure that everyone benefits at the end of the day. Additionally, our youth and young people are crying out for representation that takes into account their needs and their well-being, to ensure that they have the opportunities to be productive members of society, be that as an employee, as student, an entrepreneur. I feel that I am that person, and therefore I have put myself forward to represent West End, but not only West End, Anguilla, because once elected, I become the representative for the entire island. So whatever I do must take into account the needs of Anguillians here and abroad, and also what are the needs to get Anguilla back on track, because Anguilla is in crisis and it's going to take the consultative efforts of everyone, but it's going to take the efforts of persons who are willing to step forward, to make sacrifices, and to say, I will work in the best interest of Anguilla and the people of Anguilla.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fleming. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Hodge.
First, I would like to say thank you to the organizers and the persons that came on today, but also the sponsors. But when I look through the audience, I want to say thank you to the people of my district. I see my mother in the crowd, and the people I see faces that actually are very familiar. person that helped me with fishing, helping me to correct me as a young man growing up, and made the sacrifices in a community to raise this young man you see today called Jamie Darren Hodge. I was not always the best boy. I was not always the smartest boy. I still don't think I am. But I think that the ability that the people in my district allowed me the voice to speak out to assist them to move forward in a better Anguilla. I am speaking out. I am speaking out knowing that I'm willing to put my hands back in your hand and say thank you. I'm not waiting until you're dead. I'm telling you no. I love each and every one of you. But most importantly, I want to say this. Now is the time to vote Jamie in 2020. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge. We'll now have the closing statements by Mr. Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. In 2015, in my first interview leading up to the general election, I said if Christy Richardson Harrigan won, I would support her. And a number of people said, you can't say that. This is politics. For me, it wasn't about politics. It's about representation. If you care about your community, care about your island, you're never a loser. You're never a loser because you will do the best that you can as often as you can. For me, my actions speak for themselves. And I say that because, there was a time people treated as a joke if I was out there on the road picking up bottles and cans to keep my community clean. They thought it was a joke. Hurricane Irma, when Hurricane Irma hit, the people will tell you, the people of my district will tell you I was there. They're not asking questions today, who is this person, who is that person that wants to represent the district. I was always there, I will always be there, whether I win at the next general election or not. And I think ultimately when you're looking for leadership and representation of your people, it comes from within, in here, not out of the mouth. I thank you.
That brings our debates today to an end. I have to say thank you to our sponsors, the Government of Anguilla, Flow, Titanium Audiovisual, Pink Mako, and Ashley's and Sons. Please be reminded our next debate is on Friday, June the 12th, for District Number 5. With Representatives Romel Hughes, Everly Bradley, and Merrick Richardson. Also, there is a thank you rally and motorcade for the essential workers happening on Friday, June 12th at 5 p.m. by the Grassroots Community Group. Please join in saying thank you to our workers. Thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. And have a blessed journey home. Good night.